We're at a small rural property. It's probably about 3 hectares in size. It's very typical of a lot of properties in the Adelaide Hills, a house and some paddock area and a beautiful garden. So today we're going to be showing you how to properly bait for rabbits using Pindone Oats. Rabbits like the extra protein in oats, and it's a very good and effective tool to use in spring. One of the first things you need to do before you start your program is talk to your neighbours. You're going to have a lot better rabbit control, particularly if you live on a smaller block, if you talk to your neighbours and they're actually going to control their rabbits at the same time that you're controlling your rabbits. In terms of property size, you've got to have a property that is at least 1,000 square metres. So it's roughly about 30 metres by 30 metres. There's rabbits living throughout this garden area. It's a beautiful garden, but there's so many great places for the rabbits to live and to shelter. We've chosen this area down here to use and lay our baits, just because it's fairly easy to actually make a trail, and we don't have to run a trail through the lawn. We could do, but this is just a very convenient place and it's kind of central, and I think it'll work very well. We've also got rabbit scats and buck heaps. They're poo heaps very close by, and we can see plants that have been eaten. So it's really critical that you choose a location where the rabbits are active to lay your trails. Overall, baiting is in 2 halves. We've got the free feeding process, which lasts for about 10 days, and then we've got the actual baiting process with the Pindone Oats that also lasts for about 10 days. And in each of those 2 periods, we're putting out 3 separate days. So normally day 1, day 4, day 8, and then the same in the next 10-day period. So the purpose of free feeding is it is very beneficial, because what it does, it trains the rabbits. You're actually training the rabbits to come to the bait, but you're actually using very cheap, untreated oats. Second thing is it's a period where you can assess whether other animals, like native animals, are actually eating the oats, are coming onto the oats, and you can do something about that. The third thing is it's a time to adjust where you're actually laying your trails. What you want to do is lay the bait in the evening, then come out in the morning. And when you come out in the morning, by the end of your free feeding period, you want about 20% or less, 10 to 20% of the bait left over. We come out in the twilight, just at dusk, because we want to actually lay the bait as the birds are going to bed. So just pretend it's dusk. First thing you've got to do is make a trail. And the trail doesn't need to be, or a furrow. The furrow doesn't need to be too deep. And sometimes the longer the better, but because there's a lot of rabbits around houses, sometimes you've only got a small area. I mean, often we want to try and get at least 3 metres. If you can get longer, 5 or 10 metres, even better, because what happens, the big bully dominant rabbit comes along and he gets a belly full, and he keeps all the other subdominant rabbits away, or she. So the longer the trail, the more rabbits can actually come onto the trail. And what we're doing, we're disturbing the ground because the rabbits are attracted to the smell of the freshly turned earth. We're doing our first free feed, and all we're going to do is just scatter some oats like this along the trail. And that's good enough for the first night. It's now the next morning. Ideally, you want to come out just on sunrise, because you actually don't want the oats out there for the birds to come and eat them. You don't want to attract birds to your trail. But we can actually see after the first evening, there's not too many of these oats that have actually been eaten, and that's very normal for the first free feed. Sometimes you get a little bit of a nibble, but sometimes it takes 2 or 3, and you'll actually see a lot of those grains gone. To prevent the birds coming along and getting used to this trail and coming back and possibly getting poisoned, all you can do is, with the free fed oats, these untreated oats, just cover the trail over. You can either use your boot or maybe just a hoe, trowel, so those birds are actually not going to be attracted to the trail. We're on day 5 now. We laid a second lot of free feed last night on day 4 on the evening, just on dusk, and we've come out now in the morning, and you can see that there's a few oats here, but along this trail we've had a good consumption of the oats. There's very little left on this trail. If this trail was maybe a little bit longer, we actually might, and we could actually extend the trail out that side, because we can see that there's some that are left on this side. For some reason they're not eating as many there, but they're eating more on this side, so we can extend the trail that way. We're now on the morning of day 8, and we've even had more consumption of the oats along this trail. We've got very few left, so that's a good indication. We could probably extend this trail maybe a little bit more. The other option is also to create another trail, or even 3 trails around different parts of your garden, so that we're covering all bases and we're getting more rabbits onto the trail. We talk about normally 3 free feeds. You can actually do 4 or even 5 if you need to, just to make sure that you're getting the right locations and you're actually getting the rabbits onto the trail and eating. It's a bit of trial and error, but if you're trying to, you may need to try your trails in a few different locations so you get a good consumption of those oats, and then they're ready to move on to the Pindone trail feeding. So once we've done our 3 or so free feeds and we're actually getting good consumption, we now know that we can effectively use the Pindone oat bait to control the rabbits. On the day after your last free feed, what you want to do is put up some signs. These need to go on your front gate and any fences or areas that are adjacent to where the public might get into your property. These notices need to be left up for 4 weeks after your final Pindone feed. We're going to lay the Pindone oats, so we need to protect ourselves. Elbow length gloves are the requirement on the label. It's also good to wear overalls, so you can just put them in the wash afterwards. Please read the label. It's got all the information you need in terms of the directions of use and protecting yourself and protecting native animals. This is now the first day of your Pindone oat treatment, and there's always the interval of about 3 to 5 days between each of the free feeds and the poison feeds. So we're now on day 11. And what we've got to do is just create the trail, and it's in the same location as your last free feed, because that's the location where those rabbits are coming along and they're really hoeing into the oats. So what we're going to do is just in the same sort of density as we did with the untreated oats, just lay them along the trail. What we don't want to be doing is laying these trails when rain is forecast. So like I said before, there's a 3 to 5 day interval between each of the trails or the feeds, so if there's rain on one day you can extend it or just come forward one day so you can keep the program going. We're in the morning after our first Pindone feed, and we don't want to leave these oats out for anything to pick up, like magpies or parrots or even your pet dog. So just pick up those oats and just make sure that no off targets are affected. Just put them in a bucket, and on the label it says to actually dispose of them by deep burial. Just dig a hole about 500 mil deep, and then they can just go straight in that hole and you got no worries. Repeat the process on day 14 and then on day 18. If you're still finding that you're getting good consumption on day 18, you might want to consider even going on with a 4th Pindone feed. The other alternative is to wait about 10 days. The Pindone takes about 10 days to move through the rabbit system, and then just see how many rabbits you've got left after that period. But if you can only lay small trails, say 3 meters or something like that, you might find that repeating the Pindone feeds is necessary, because each time you're getting a dominant rabbit that's excluding other rabbits and they're not actually feeding on that trail. If you find any dead rabbit carcasses within a period of about 12 days after your last Pindone feed, the best thing to do is to dig a hole and bury them deeply. So what can you expect from your rabbit baiting program? It really depends on how diligent you are and how effective you were in that baiting window. If you're persistent, you do have the ability to actually make a really big dent in the rabbit population on your property, and you might even find that you actually get rid of all the rabbits on your property. The issue comes when you live on a small property and your neighbours haven't done anything, and there's populations of rabbits outside your property. So that's when it's really critical, even at the start of your program, that you talk to your neighbours, because if they can do it at the same time, you really do have a really good chance of getting rid of a lot of rabbits, maybe even all the rabbits in your area. If your neighbours don't want to use Pindone Oats, there are many other options in terms of controlling rabbits, and you should actually be doing these things even if you're using the bait, the Pindone Oats. So there's harbour removal, that's above ground shelter. If you've got lots of pallets or rubbish or piles of vegetation lying around, that's great habitat, that's great places for rabbits to live. So if you can remove those, that'll reduce the number of places they've got to live. There's also biocontrol options available. Exclusion fencing is a great way to go, because if it's done properly, problem solved. So that you can do that around your veggie gardens. You could probably even do it around maybe your back garden or your whole property, and you'd exclude those rabbits permanently. Other options include, for rural people, there's shooting, as long as you've got the appropriate licenses. And then the last option is, if you've got any warrens or holes on your place, you need to deal with those. And we've got another video to explain how to deal with those. So the other option you've got as well is fumigation, and probably the best way to do that is to get in contact with a contractor who can come and help you do that. Okay, we're just going to set up a camera, which is really important if you live close to native vegetation, and you want to ensure that no native animals are going to eat your bait. So just drive a stake into the ground. Make sure there's no pipes or other services below the stake, but it doesn't need to be in too far. And then you can attach your trail camera. These cameras are now fairly inexpensive, and they're a great resource, especially it'll give you great peace of mind in terms of knowing what is happening at night when the oats are out and there are animals feeding on it. So once you've got your camera set up, you can actually put your mesh covers over, and these keep birds out, they keep kangaroos out, they won't keep the small rodents out like the antechinus and the bush rats and anything that's rabbit size or smaller, but they'll definitely keep the birds out and the kangaroos. And just make sure that you peg them down. Sometimes the kangaroos can shuffle things around a bit, so just peg them down. These are actually tree guards, half tree guards, and they're really good for keeping kangaroos and keeping birds away from the trail. If you're close to native vegetation, you really, and particularly with bandicoot, you don't want to lay trails within 100 metres of bandicoot habitat. So there's a combination of buffer areas, these mesh guards plus the camera can really help you determine and protect those native animals. When you walk into a rural store to buy the bunny bait, the oat bait, you might get a bit of a shock if you've used carrots, because it's about twice as much to buy the pail of oats, but you actually need to use about half the amount of oats. So in terms of cost, it's about the same cost, oats versus carrots.